Janet, I have a question. You mentioned that you must disclose conflicts of interest. What if we want to continue anyway?
Yeah, if you or someone from your brokerage finds a buyer, why is that a conflict of interest?
It would be a conflict of interest because my brokerage would be serving two masters. Let me explain. As sellers, you want to get the highest price and best terms for your home. The buyers want to get your home for the lowest price and the best terms for them.
Right. So how do we deal with that?
There are a number of ways that we can handle this conflict and still continue to provide services to you and the buyer. Our relationship would only change on a temporary basis as the result of a particular transaction. If the transaction does not come together, we would continue with the original agreement. How our relationship changes depends on you and your instructions to me when this happens, and that would need to be done in writing. You would have three options. The first option we need to discuss is called transaction brokerage. I would become a transaction facilitator, and my role and my brokerage's role will be to assist both you and the potential buyers to reach an agreement for the sale of your property.
Would you still have to keep our information confidential?
Definitely. For example, you wouldn't want me to tell the buyer your motivation for selling, or what price you're willing to take, or any personal information. However, I must still disclose any material latent defects about the home that you have shared with me.
If our relationship changes, are you still working for us?
Yeah, are you still working for us?
With respect to the negotiation process between you and the buyers, my brokerage and I will adopt a neutral position, so the buyer has no advantage over you. We must treat both parties in an even-handed, objective, and impartial manner. My role is to facilitate the transaction. That is to assist you and the buyer to reach an agreement.
So realistically, is that possible?
From my past experience, yes. Clients need to decide what is important for them in any transaction. For example, as sellers, only you can decide what price you're willing to accept, what possession date is satisfactory, or what buyer's terms are acceptable. Part of my service to you is to provide you with the information you will need so that you can make an informed decision. Essentially, I can no longer advocate a decision for you, but I can facilitate one. And that's where informed decision-making comes in. I can give you the facts, but you have to make the decision. However, I cannot disclose any personal information about the other party, including their motivation or the price they might pay for your home.
So it really is our decision.
Yes. No matter what relationship we're in, you need to make the decisions that are best for you. No one should be making decisions for you.
We still get the information we need, right?
Yes, and I can provide you with the information and the tools to help you make your decisions.
When we get an offer, how will we know what the market is doing?
Based on the comparative market evaluation I gave you, we already have a pretty good idea of what your home is worth on today's market. Ultimately, your sale price will be determined by what the buyer is prepared to pay and what you are prepared to accept. I will update you on the market with current sales statistics when we get an offer on your home, so you will be making decisions based on current information. In transaction brokerage, the buyer will be entitled to the same sales statistics. In addition, you have the seller information and the guides I gave you on my last visit, which are from the RECA website.
Well, what if we don't want to do transaction brokerage? What other options do we have?
If both clients do not agree to transaction brokerage, unless otherwise agreed to by the parties, the one that entered into an agency relationship first will remain as a client. This is another benefit of having a written service agreement. The client who remains with the brokerage continues to get full representation. You have two other options. You can be a customer. It's called customer status. For this specific transaction, the brokerage would not provide any representation for that party or advocate on their behalf. However, the brokerage can provide customer services, which include real estate statistics, drafting offers and counter offers, and being kept informed on the progress of the transaction. Again, this option is temporary, and if the transaction doesn't come together, the client would return to full representation through the original agreement.
If we didn't want customer status, what's our other option?
The third option is to go to another brokerage to eliminate the conflict and have them work on the transaction as your sole agent. They would provide full agency representation, but only on that specific transaction.
But if we already signed with you, doesn't that break our contract?
No. Written service agreements have a clause that provides you with these three options. This is another benefit of written service agreements. All these options relate to a specific transaction you may be considering. Should the transaction not come together, we return to a sole agency relationship, acting only on your behalf as a client of the brokerage. We would continue to market your home in order to find a buyer and look for your new home together.
Okay, this could work.
We know that conflict is always possible in the real estate business, and there are clear and transparent ways to deal with a conflict. But it is important to recognize that it's the consumer who must make an informed decision. The most common way to deal with this type of conflict is to sign a transaction brokerage agreement. Transaction brokerage clearly outlines the roles of the industry member. It sets the stage for an even-handed, objective, and impartial treatment of both parties. The client must provide written consent through the transaction brokerage agreement. This would amend the original buyer's or seller's agreement. Unless otherwise agreed to by the parties, there are two more options if one party decides not to enter into a transaction brokerage agreement. The client can choose customer status or can engage another brokerage to complete the transaction. The client must always make the decision based on timely and informed consent. It's why the Real Estate Council of Alberta recommends written service agreements. They're important tools that clearly outline the roles and responsibilities of the brokerage and the client.
Great. Now that we've signed the Agency Relationships Guide, I'd like to look at the service agreement for sellers.
Oh, I think I have that here in my file. Is this it? Exclusive seller brokerage agreement?
Yes, that's it. You might have also heard this referred to as the listing agreement. I think we should review all our respective obligations as well. They're all outlined here. In addition to the duties we just talked about, the brokerage also has some obligations to you as sellers. These would include using our best efforts in finding a buyer for your home, helping negotiate offers, and keeping you informed on the progress of your negotiations and any subsequent transactions. The written service agreement also has some obligations for sellers.